really well. So I'm doing it's called the Chili Run. I'm doing a Chili Run on the 31st, and that's going to be a 2-mile run. So I'll run it, but that's just my way of keeping physically healthy. That's all. That's my check-in, and my family is good, so I'm grateful.
Wow. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Janae.
Welcome.
Anyone that is ready to check in? Feel free to do so. And we always say that silence is also communication. So don't feel pressured. If you don't have to, you don't have to. But I can see a number of us are here. If there's nobody wanting to check in, we could just proceed with our program.
Sam, let me try my best. Let me hope I'll do it. I had a very hectic day. I hope I'll have an energy up to 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because today, more like back-to-back for me. Yes. Critically, since last time we met, I think we had a session on Saturday which was reviving the whole spirit. Today is just a continuation of the spirit. It's a tough environment. Every now and then, doesn't spend a day. We've got some words which normally used called RIP, rest in peace. It becomes frequent. Every day there's a funeral. Every day there's a death. So I'm not sure whether it's becoming part and parcel of them. It's something which you need to get adjusted to, or something which will end at some stage to have what you call an normal life, or it's normal life. I'm not sure how to put it in. So this is what's called an environment. On individual basis, I think a person is coming from a dip, and this dip doesn't show that it's moving up very quickly. It's moving very slowly, but it's part and parcel of the game. It's more to say how do you revive yourself consistently. Another thing which keeps me busy a lot is it looks like I'm more a facilitator or a problem solver within my family. Every now and then I get call or distance. They keep on just reviving my mind. Oh, I'm a human being. I need to help the other. I think that's what keeps me a little bit up and running. And further than that, into the elderlies, but as people choose to keep the spirit up. Looking forward to this lecture today.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rapula. Yes, Saturday was really great session. So we'll reflect on that later on. Great. Welcome to everyone that I haven't welcomed. Mulikwe, Maynard, Metro, Savelo, Lesivana, Joe, Judith. Yeah, welcome on board. We're back on lecture number 4.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Brother.
Welcome.
Thank you, Brother Sam.
Great stuff. Yeah, let's start because the time is moving. I want just to take us back to module 3, just to remind you that that is the module during which we started addressing those 30-something odd conducts. We call them conducts of us as DJs, broadcasters, and hosts. Every time I mentioned the titles, I always remind myself why we're using all these titles. DJ, which is commonly known as a disc jockey. I think it comes from music side. And then, of course, the broadcaster coming from the fact that broadcaster is a broad terminology, but anybody that is involved in the activity of broadcasting is a broadcaster. But sometimes when people talk about broadcaster, they're referring to some entrepreneurs in the broadcasting business, which suggests that you can, I don't know whether you can be a broadcaster if you don't know how to DJ. Unless you are a venture capitalist and you give money to those who have ideas to start a broadcasting business. But I also want to remind us that broadcasting or streaming or podcasting or radio, online radio things are no longer really exclusive. And I want us to remind ourselves that it was like that then, but these things have opened up because technology is in our hands. However, what is not generally available to everybody is the knowledge of packaging the content and delivering it to whoever is receiving your content. And that's where it becomes very difficult, because there are certain principles or there are certain qualities you must have for you to be able to bring across the content. And sometimes you could have the content, and if you don't have those characteristics, you're competing with thousands and thousands of other people, especially in the podcasting industry. But all of them, they are still growing fields. So in lecture 3, we started with conduct number 1, which was self-introduction. And those of you who are active daily in communication with other stakeholders, you will realize that self-introduction is not something that is frowned at any longer. Previously, people would be very reluctant to tell people excitingly about who they are. But in coaching, we're saying that if you cannot really position yourself and share with me your journey and your perspective, it makes it very difficult for me to relate to you. So we need to shake this off and be very much intentional when we take off in a show in introducing ourselves, because people are always very interested to know what made you to be who you are, and also to know who really are you. And only you yourself can do that very well. And I found that when you introduce yourself very well, everything else starts to flow very well. And that was conduct number 1. Conduct number 2 was the introduction of your co-host. I found this still very much of a challenge, because we have, sometimes when there's a host and the co-host, we tend to think that the co-host is somebody that comes in when the host call them to come in. And I think we need to work very hard at this, because sometimes you are the co-host because there is no host. You are co-host, all of you. Basically, you are hosts. But if you don't really bring that balance, it comes out across to the outside that somebody is actually invited. And the tendency then is that you might be the one that actually is carrying the content, who is an expert, who actually can drive the point home. Remember, when you are hosting a show, you are not hosting it for yourself, but you are hosting for the people who are hungry for the content and the knowledge, and therefore you must actually meet those expectations. Conduct number 3 was about the introduction of the guests. Here I want to say that when you are in the studio and the guest is already there, you are like a football team or any other sport club that is in the field now to play, but they've been practicing the whole week, and now they are just actually doing what is very much common, and they are playing the game, except that they are now on the field of play competing with somebody. Why I'm saying that is, you can't get to know your client, your guest on the day of the show. You can't worry about the content that you are going to use to introduce your guest on the day, at the moment when you are in the show. Because then you don't know the guest. you can only introduce somebody that you know, which means that it's incumbent upon you as the host to do a little bit of more work. It is also a sign of respect when you have really done thorough work on your guest and you are confident that what you are telling us about the guest will sit very well with your guest. And having a guest also is like you are having your friend, maybe first time that you bring in this guest, and you are really now comfortably introducing them to your family of listeners and fellow DJs. The fourth point was conduct. Number 4 was the introduction of the station. This serves 2 purposes. The first purpose is that as the station, obviously we want to grow the station, we want to popularize it, and we want to articulate the way we introduce it and why it is the one that is hosting your show. But on the other hand, it is your platform. This is the platform on which you are showcasing who you are. So therefore, it's important for people to know that this platform is aligned with what you are going to be showing them. Therefore, we encourage you to make an effort in understanding the nitty-gritties of the station. It is really it's like a stage on which you perform your act, and you ought to know its corners. You ought to know what makes it to be what it is. So that was also very, very important and was emphasized during lecture 3. Conduct number 5 was very similar to introduction, but it's really checking in, and this goes deeper to say that don't plunge yourself into a show. Try to connect with your a client, your guest, and also connect with your listeners. Let them feel like they want to check in as you are checking in. And yes, we use the standard body, mind, and spirit. That is our standard checking in, but nothing stops you from going beyond that. Like maybe you want to check in with a story, that you think will inspire the guest and the listeners and will want to make them stay. If they will say, I want to listen to the first few minutes and I'm going to go, they must be made to change their mind because of the way you have checked in. I regard checked in as the key that you all use to open a session. In coaching, this is very, very powerful. I mean, if you miss it at the check-in level, you may end up not having a really good quality session. So checking in is extremely important, and I did emphasize that a good show is a good show if all these 3 categories, checking in, the conversation, and the checking out, are equally of quality. Because you can't have a weak checking in and then expect and then you have a strong conversation and maybe strong checking out and still think that you have had a great show. People will remember and they will say, he started so poorly, although at the end of the day it worked out. It's almost like he did very well, but here. Yeah, so that is very important to... Actually, we always say that a good start, everything relies on a good start. And the check-in and the introduction and the opening of your show already tells us, if it's a great standard, it tells us that you have prepared. And if you have prepared very well, you keep your clients, your listeners, and they are actually ready to pardon you if after that you falter. So that is quite very important. Any reflections on that based on our last session or lecture module 3? Feel free to jump in. Any of those points saying something to you? Hi, Metro.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I missed the last two, but I heard the introduction of the self-introduction and the co-host.
Yes.
Maybe I will comment on those two. And I think that it has been very tough for me at the beginning. But I mean, I've actually listened to the coaching in terms of writing a script and not taking for granted that you know the people that you are inviting, but have a script in front of. I had that discipline in terms of having the script in front of me and reading from it, and also I was not introducing myself in the other shows because you know how it is like to introduce yourself is not easy.
Yes.
But I take certain effort to write the biography. I mean the summary about myself, where I come from, and things that will be interesting to the audience. So I think I'll keep on that script and be consistent.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, we are learning, we are growing.
Yes.
For the introduction of co-host as well, we have gathered with our brothers and talked about it to say we need to share each other's profiles, and so that we are able to introduce one another in a proper way. So I've got their profiles and I'm consistent also. They update it as and when it goes.
Yes.
And,
absolutely, and I have observed that, and it's quite very helpful, for the people on the other side to know who are these people that are co-presenting.
Yeah, if I can maybe comment also, Brother Sam, if I can also comment.
Yes.
My name is Sabelo. We co-host together with Brother Sydney. So I think the conduct number 2, which is the introduction of the co-host.
Yes.
And also striking the balance between playing the role as a co-host as opposed to be playing the role as a guest.
Yeah.
I need to improve on that because we can easily position ourselves as a guest as opposed to be a co-host, and the listener will pick up that. And I think we haven't been able to do that well as a jointly as a co-host. We tend to take the position as though we are a guest. So that balance we still need to really work on it.
Yeah.
We are improving on it, but I don't think we are there yet. Because when we have the discussions, you can see that the co-hosts tend to take the position almost like they need to be invited into the discussions, or you have to wait for the host to indicate that now you can speak. So we haven't really get it right. But in other shows we were coming right, but I think the last show in particular, I saw there was now that gap there, but we will improve on that.
Great. And Sydney, so are you able to see your growth curve without necessarily having to draw it? In other ways, do you feel that you are much more comfortable, you are much more in control? What is your system telling you?
Yeah, I think what I can say, I was better off than the first day. The first day I was so much stressing to be in control. And I want to allude to the fact that my brother Sabelo has mentioned, because we actually have these discussions amongst ourselves. To say that in the listeners, it should not look like, though sometimes we get so much excited and forget. But and I think yes, I think, and because of the practice, because I think I had several of the shows that have happened, so I think practice makes perfect. So, but I'm learning, I'm growing, and we're always having debrief meetings amongst ourselves to get what we've done right, what we've done wrong, and also always plan for the next show to look at those things like Brother Saulo has indicated. This is what we always talk about, to say it should sound like when we are actually broadcasting that we are in a boardroom or in a studio or in one place, and the conversation is flowing without having to be directed anyway. So I think we want to improve on that. Thanks.
Great.
If I may just come in there, Brother Sam, towards the end of last year, I think we had developed to the level where we started to achieve this easy flow of discussions, well.
Yes.
And I think the break has actually somehow taken us a little bit back.
Yeah.
Because when we had our first show this year, the old habits started to come.
Yeah.
But we will rectify it in the next few shows.
Yeah, if I may just chip in as well, Sam.
Yes, Pat.
I'm guilty of having made my co-host feel like an invited guest and keeping him on the sideline and bringing him in when the show is already almost heating up and stuff like that. But I was with Sydney and Mpusete and also Tendani. But I must say, with time, I saw it was improving. Obviously, this was through a lot of coaching that we were getting, either on the show or on the side after and before the shows and stuff like those. But indeed, yes, the co-hosting introduction, I think we made it secondary, as though they're not part of the show. But I'm sure we can improve it. But we certainly would improve also, and I'm now worried. Mr. Marshall Sabelo saying the old habits are coming back, and now
You're worried that
it's getting me now, because I was also worried about the break and when it comes back. So I don't know, but yeah, I'll lean on to the hope that the Sydney will be there with us, and the self-introduction as well. I don't know if it's an issue of the background as to how somebody grew up or where you grew up from and stuff like those. We weren't really as detailed as you want us to, and now I think we got it. We've written quite a lot of notes, and I think those helps, and the conversations we are having also. Pre-shows as well are really helping, and I hope the all habits don't come back when we start on the first weekend of February. Otherwise, I see quite a lot of improvement. I was excited with my first show, but as time went on, I realized that my first show was actually not the best. I don't know why you were keeping quiet in that first show, but yeah,
you can imagine if we had to hit you hard in the first show, you were not gonna come back.
I've ran away.
Yeah.
But good.
But self-knowledge is empowerment, colleagues. I'm glad that you are able now on your own to can see that there's a difference between show one and the latest show, because now you know that there is growth.
Mr. Zima, please may I ask a question?
Tembela?
Yes. Please may I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, so just to this point about the host and the co-host, and I think for me what's becoming more enlightened is, so how do we strike the balance between the host and the co-host, in the sense that are they equal, or as a co-host you need to wait for the host to kind of allow you to enter the conversation and make you feel like you're a part of the conversation, because I don't think anyone wants to feel like they have to keep themselves into the conversation. So are we saying that host and co-host are equal, or how should this dynamic play out?
In terms of running the show, they are equal. But in terms of who is responsible to make sure that that show is taken care of outside the actual show, the co-host is responsible. So it's like I'm your coach and you are a coach, and we coach equally, but one day I decide to come to coach at your office. So you will make me coffee and everything, but we will still equally host the coaching session or the session. The other time when you come to my office, I will make sure that I give you coffee, but it is none of the client's interest as to who owns the show. You understand? When you are hosting the show, you are equally the host. There is a reason why you're collaborating. And that collaboration has to deliver something that you together, you sat down and agreed on. And that's why when you are co-host, it's extremely important that there is a planning before together and you can decide. But that should, your behavior, your conduct during the show should not communicate to the listeners that somebody is above somebody. You know what I mean? You can even disclose to them that I'm the person charged with the responsibility of taking care of this show, but this colleague of mine is equally competent and is equally is an equal partner as me in delivering this. The interchange, if it's really properly structured that way, becomes melodious to the audience. They will even forget as to who is the host and who is the co-host. In fact, you shouldn't be introducing each other as a host and a co-host. You are just a co-host, or you are just host. So you need to be, in other words, you need to be mindful of the messages that people are getting as a result of your behavior in the studio, or your words, the way you're expressing in the studio. And that is something that you need to be conscious of, because it happens without you thinking. Have I answered you, Tembela?
Yes, you have. Thank you.
Mr. Sema?
Yes, Captain.
Captain, I just want to bring another element to Tembeka's question. It's regarding, because sometimes you find we are co-hosts, but the actual host of the show will lose contact because of either internet or connection and so forth. So you have to be equally ready, because there's been some experiences whereby, but you have to be equally ready to be able to continue and limit any damage which might happen if ever one of you is not continuing with the show. So it's actually important that you fully ready, that even if you are co-host, that you can be able to continue or host the entire session by yourself.
Exactly. So yeah.
It has actually happened. Host had to leave the show in the middle of the show for some personal reasons, but I think the preparation had gone prior to that show happening, and it meant that we struck as co-hosts to say we're going to go into the show, and the equality that we enjoyed among ourselves. It did. I don't know how many people noticed that. Maybe they didn't even notice that there was a main host, but I don't know how many people noticed one of the hosts had left the show during the show as such. So the preparation and just making yourself as co-host aware in terms of your how equal you are on the show. It is very important. So what important is say, it's from experience that we had as well.
Mm. You often see the dynamics of co-hosting happen when a particular radio station or a TV station interviews somebody very powerful, like the president of the country. If you have the opportunity next time where the president is being interviewed and the reason why they put two people is because that particular guest is heavy. And if it happens that the other colleague runs out of ideas in the middle of the show, and such powerful people can change your whole show. It helps when the other person is busy engaging the president, that the other co-host is busy now making observations and taking note of the things that might have not been in the planning. So it's really a collaboration, and in many cases, it is to make sure that you are not burdened as one person with the responsibility of keeping the guest at the right level to meet the expectations of the listeners. And as I've said before, you must always keep the listeners at the back of your mind. When you are not yet experienced, it's very easy actually in the show to forget that you are actually doing this for the listeners, not for yourself. And that is when actually you lose the awareness that you have. Yes, Shari?
My question is about the dynamics of how you guys keep things going outside of the actual show, right? So like, do you, outside of even the planning sessions about the show, how purposeful does one have to be about actually getting to know your co-hosts and the people on your show? You know, it's like, must you become sort of friends so that you can actually get one another's vibe, you know when to step in and stuff like that. Like, what do you practically do?
Very good question. Sydney?
Thank you so much. Maybe just to answer the question is that for us, I think it is much easier because we pray together and we meet once on a Thursday for several hours, and part of what we do is then to plan for the show on what we would like to position, and from there then we come up with whatever it is that has to be sent to the production team. So yes, I think the important part is knowing your core. If we don't, I mean, I would talk from an experience of one of the guests. I'm not talking about Cohost, from our sports show. He tends to, he talks like there's no space for you to come in, and you don't want to be disrupting the guest.
Yeah.
But sometimes it becomes difficult because we have a plan now. We'll talk with coach. How to get on. So, but to answer the question is that what happens behind the scene is the preparation. For example, with the sports show, we meet before. We discuss. We look at which guest we want to invite. And how relevant the person is on the topic that is going to be discussed, and what relevant knowledge would be able to he'll add value on the show and to the listeners. I mean, we had, for example, coach guests like Coach Zeka Marcus, who is very, very helpful in terms of information and on all of that, and willing to share with the audience that adds value. So it's more on knowing, I think, the guest or the host that you're bringing, and maybe have a private engagement with them before the actual show. And I don't think that it would be appropriate to be one day before or just at the show, because you don't know how he is going to respond. But I also bring preparation in terms of what Brother Sam has actually approached us to say you must make your guest comfortable, and you mustn't feel like he's a guest, but you try and connect in whatever way, and it becomes easier as you go along. Maybe the last point that I wanted to say that Captain mentioned, is when you come out of when you talk about disruption. There are two things that I've learned is that when you come back, you don't talk about the disruption. You continue the conversation as if disruption has not happened, because it's recorded and it is something that has to even stay for longer. Maybe after 10 years, people will be listening to the podcast. So there shouldn't be any form of talking about things that may not be relevant then. So I've also paid attention to that. And the other thing that I've also learned is when you talk to the listener, which I actually it was raised on the show, but one of our brothers, Pastor Pendulum's man, they also spoke about in our conversation that when you speak, and Brother Sam also mentioned to say you speak to a listener. So I've learned, sometimes I forget, but I always remind myself, try to recall to say I'm speaking to a listener than having to bracket everyone else. And it helps because now it gets a focus on that particular listener and the message, that you're packaging to a person who is listening in his car, in his bedroom, or wherever. So those are things that I thought I must share. Yes, Shari.
Yeah. And Shari is asking if you knew each other before the show.
With Brother Sabelo, I've known him for he's my business partner. I've known him before, so I know what kind of person he is. Pastor Pendulo, I'm Sabelo, but we've become very close, and we are so much close because we connect, in many other events, and also we've made a dedication to pray together before we go to the show. So yeah, I knew them before. With the others, like for example, Zeka Marcus, it was an advantage because he was once my coach at some point when I was still playing football. So he does know me well, and I know life is. And many other people that are in the sporting industry, I would have an idea of what kind of people we are because it's a small circle. Thank you.
Brother Sabelo, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I just wanted to give also an additional input, just an experience that I can share, given the fact that I am the co-host with Brother Sidney. To answer the question that is by Shari, I would say that really, if we consider ourselves as co-hosts and we have a long-term view of this particular relationship or program, I would really suggest and encourage that you consider to invest time in the relationship. In other words, the more you get to understand each other and you get to know each other, and also almost like a role program before you go on a show. Like in our case, on a Thursday we will discuss as though we are in a broadcast, as though we are already in the show, and we'll discuss the very same topic, engage it thoroughly and discuss it and laugh and enjoy and create a space where the discussion can flow. So the more you do that, even if someone you didn't know in the past, but if you invest in the knowledge, in the understanding of the person and how you actually go about this thing, you will find that the discussions will flow, and you will be able to manage that show very well. That would be my advice, and based on the experience that what we do on a weekly basis.
Great. Judith and then Rapula.
I just wanted to share a personal experience that I've had. I haven't hosted a show yet, but in the meantime, I've sort of like built a relationship with my co-host. in terms of meeting up for preparations. We don't have, well, we try to have daily meetings, but sometimes it doesn't happen due to certain circumstances. But the more you get to spend time with your co-host, the better you know the person. I feel like at this point, even though we haven't hosted a show yet, but I have sort of like an idea of the kind of person that my co-host is, and I feel more comfortable right now co-host with him. So I feel like it sort of like helps in a way. And I've also suggested that we do a dry run before actual show with our guests, so that we can get to know each other before the actual show. It also will help us in a way to get to know each other.
Great stuff. Yeah, I've just put in the chart there. Let's look at the relationship building as the building block number one. Let's get that right. I'll come to you, Rapula. Also, most of the relationships or the co-hosting relationship that we are building, it is just started. So don't feel shy to recommend the shifting and rearranging, because we put you together with certain people based on what little knowledge we have of each of you, but in many cases based on the area of business that you are involved in. So there's still a lot of opportunities to ask the office to reorganize. And I don't think anybody will take insults to that, because we are all busy people and we are all having multiple interests, and sometimes we think we've got it right only to find out, no, maybe your interest is lying somewhere else. Secondly, the fact that you have got a standing co-host with somebody, it doesn't stop you from every now and then go and co-host with somebody else, because that way you get to explore the dynamics and explore the type of personalities that will function very well with you. We cannot ignore the fact that we are diverse in terms of our personalities, and we must do our justice to ourselves to respect that of ourselves, but also of the other people. We are one big family, and the opportunities are galore. If you feel like once a month is just too little, you want to co-host with somebody, go to Janae and say, Janae, I want to co-host with you for your 101 OD, or that is doable. These are not contractual relationships. These are truly relationships that they are going to depend on how much you invest on each other. And I think this is one of the biggest business requirements. In business, we do business with people that we have built relationship with. Many a times we ignore that and we jump into, then we find that we are in the studio and we start to not liking each other because we didn't know the angles we are coming from. But it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. Thank you. Rapula?
Thank you, Sam. I wanted to emphasize to Shari that ideally, even if you don't have a relationship with that co-host person, create a relationship with that person. So as you may have a different understanding of the topic, and he may have or she may have a different understanding of it, but the communication prior to that, it helps to normalize the situation. So I'll give one example. In my co-host with Abel, I hope he's around here, the very first show of Abel, he just decided system or network decided, no, he's not going to be in a show. If we didn't communicate prior to that, I wouldn't have been able to host that show. And I think it was the very first one which created alertness to all the teams that, guys, you need to make sure that you speak to one another. But today I've made some learnings, especially from Sydney and Zapper in terms of other aspects of the co-host.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And you can also benchmark with people who host shows, not necessarily radio shows. When there's events, awards, and it's almost like a given that there will be two people, Marawa and Carol Shabalala, co-hosting the PSL awards. If you look closely, you will see that these people have planned and they cover each other, and It's incredible. There's no way they will do it unless they've had to build a relationship during the countdown to the hours, and they've literally planned, and they even talk about what is your style. When do you chip in? Do you like it when I chip in when you are talking? Some people don't like that. Some people say, let me finish first, and then when I'm done with my thought process, then you can come in, because if you come in between, I tend to lose the trail of thought, and then I'm going to look like a fool. So we have different preferences, and I think don't limit this benchmarking of this experience just to radio. There are many areas where people co-host, even on TV. Great. Wonderful input. Thank you so much, and I'm glad we revisited the lecture number 3. We're going to take 5 minutes break. When we come back now, we go to the next conduct. You can imagine by the time we reach to conduct number 32, how much we will have really developed in terms of awareness. The main thing here, don't worry about the doing. You're still going to forget these things in your show. The main thing is repetition, and the main thing is awareness. That's all. As long as there's awareness, you can be guaranteed that your subconscious mind will work for you at the time when you don't expect it to. So we will come back and talk about a facilitation of a conversation, because this is it. This is the gist of it. You are a facilitator. There is somebody sitting somewhere receiving that output. And then we will talk about how do you affirm and motivate your guest. And then, of course, how do you lead conversations? And when do you really lead the conversation? When do you take a back seat and allow the conversation to flow? That is what we will spend the next hour on. And then the last hour, we're going to spend it on the documents that I've sent to you. We'll just talk through them, because we have to come to a point where we work with ourselves, with our development gaps specific. Because if we just talk generically about what you do when we are in a show, and we don't look at you closely to say, but when you have a problem of not knowing when to put full stop, what can we do to help you to be able to put full stop? Or when you don't really seem to be hearing yourself when you are talking. You know, all those skills that people don't see, but they are very crucial for us to become really, truly good facilitators and hosts and DJs. 5 minutes. We will be back at 15 minutes past, 9:15, we'll be back.
Thank you.